So, 42nd straight year, you came out of the regionals, and you are now advancing to the NCAA championship for the 42nd straight year. I mean, no one has a streak like that. How important is that to the girls, to the program, and to Utah Gymnastics as a whole?
Well, having an opportunity to go to nationals again 42 times, it's something I work very hard to not think a lot about or talk a lot about with my athletes on the front side. But once qualified, it's really fun to celebrate that, because it is. It's historical. It's amazing, and no one's more proud than I am. But again, that's really not, you know, those types of things are not the full focus right now for our team. We are thrilled to have qualified on through regionals, and we can't wait to get to the national championships in St. Louis and represent the University of Utah.
This is a fairly young team. You've been through a lot of adversity this year, and the girls just seem to keep delivering.
Right. You know, this group has kind of labeled themselves as the Tenacious 12, and I think it's very appropriate because they have stayed tenacious through much adversity. Some that started earlier in the season, and then with Kari Lee having a sprained ankle recently, then others had to step up again. They continue to take whatever obstacle and march forward, and it's a lot of fun to work with a group of athletes that are kind of in that mode and are persistent with their plans.
And even prior to me working here at the university, I was working in the media, and I would come up here and do gymnastics and cover you guys. I have to say, this seems to me, and this is just my own personal perspective, and tell me if I'm right on this, this seems to be one of the most competitive teams that I've ever seen in my 10 years of being up in this area.
Well, I do think that slowly over time we have created a group that has quite a bit of competitive spirit, and I do love that about this team. And the most recent addition was Michaela Skinner, who showed up in October of this year. She would be, you know, our youngest freshman in terms of arrival onto the scene, because she came to us partway through the first semester, and she also has an extreme competitive spirit. So I feel like her added into the group just spurred that on even more.
And then, let's see, what else? Diversity, I've already talked about competitive 42 years, going to the championship. Is there anything you wanted to specifically?
I think this team has really tried to stay focused in on some of their goals, which have really centered around postseason. Last year we didn't finish, we had a great season, but we didn't finish the year the way that they had hoped with some of the postseason meets. And I feel like they are showing that no matter what, they are going to continue to try and have a better end of the season. And I've enjoyed watching that. It's coming from some leadership that we have through Bailey Rowe, our lone senior, and then Maddie Stover, and the two of them are our team captains, and I have watched them wrap their arms around this group of young women. And when you have some of that coming more from within the peers as opposed to coach driven, it's magical.
You ended up with a very familiar rotation. Luck of the draw?
So with rotation, it is a random draw, and we're thrilled to have the Olympic rotation. I look at that momentarily, but mostly just in terms of logistics, where the buys fall and how we handle that. The last thing I'll do is make the athletes feel like, oh, we have that, now we've got it made. There's much to do on every single event, no matter what order you draw, and that is how we'll continue to approach it.
With any sport, you always want to be performing your best as you go into the postseason. Do you feel like that's what's happened with this team? You've gone through some adversity, you've mixed up the lineups here and there based on what you've had to do. They've been incredibly competitive and pushing one another. And
right.
I feel like now that you've hit this postseason, they are performing their best. They understand what's...
Well, I do think our athletes have continued to rise, And through the season, they've used each meet, which we talk a lot about, to gain some practices and preparation for the end. And I do feel like we have many of our athletes that are performing at their best, really all of them that are capable, and some of our athletes that were out of lineups have moved into lineups and are at their best. That is not an easy task when they did not get all of the practices with each competition. So I couldn't be more proud of some of the things that have happened. And at our regional competition, there was definitely silver linings to that night, with Kari Lee landing a bar dismount on a sprained ankle and Shannon McNatt doing her first ever beam routine at the end of the lineup and then hitting it cold and having our best score. So some of those things were goosebump material, and I'm really proud of our athletes to have stayed tenacious through a meet that is always stressful, and there's many teams that are good enough to go, but you have to be great on that night in order to move forward, and I'm really proud of our team. Good? Okay. All right. I don't know about that.
You make it easy.